This episode of Scrolling to Death is sponsored by Bark Technologies. Bark offers parents advanced content monitoring for all of your child's devices. Bark is literally helping to save lives and has alerted parents to millions of life-threatening situations like self-harm and severe bullying. More on Bark in the episode notes. Welcome to Scrolling to Death. Today I have digital safety advocate, attorney, and founder of EndTAB, Adam Dodge. Welcome, Adam.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. I saw you speak at the Seeds Summit by Nkosi last summer, and I reached out right away. I don't remember why it took us so long to chat, but I remember being really empowered by what you shared, and I thought that parents need to hear about it. And so I want to hear about your story and about EndTAB, but I thought we could kind of start and kick it off by talking about some of the latest things that are going on in this space around social media and AI. So why don't we start with AI, and why don't we talk about the chatbot situation? Now, a lot of people are hearing about character AI and these companion bots that are available to children and potential abuse of children by these bots. I wonder what you're seeing in this space and what you think parents need to know about related to the AI chatbots.
So this is a subject or an area of concern that my organization is going all in on in 2025. We think it's going to be one of the most disruptive technological impacts in healthy relationships and violence prevention maybe that we've ever seen. And I don't know, sometimes I feel like I sound like an alarmist, but we have done the research. We've used the apps, different apps, AI girlfriend apps, AI boyfriend apps, character AI, replica. There's a lot of them. Mm-hmm. And they are really good at simulating relationships. They're really addictive. They create this agreeable sort of feedback loop where you're kind of hearing everything you want to hear. It trains on sort of what you're interested in and feeds that back to you. It remembers everything. And it's a technology that's largely misunderstood. These companies can't really explain when something goes rogue or something goes wrong. They can't open the hood and really understand why that happened because they don't really know why these large language models, which is what's powering these chatbots, do what they do. And there are millions and millions and millions of kids are using these. We talk to kids, and it's sort of like pornography was when it came on the scene. Parents and communities did not realize that kids were being exposed to and consuming pornography at such a young age. And at such high volumes and the ease of access. And we see a lot of similarities with how that impacted kids' relationship to sex education or anything with these platforms and healthy relationship education.
What are the threats that you're seeing of the millions of kids accessing these companion bots?
Well, there's some similarities with social media and dopamine hits, right? Except it's more personalized and it's more intimate. So instead of getting a like or getting a follow, it's having a character from your favorite, cartoon or anime or book agreeing with you, liking you, checking in with you, having really deep conversations with you. And that can be, I know I already used the word addictive, but can really pull you in. And, we've already seen kids choose self-harm as a result of these relationships. And so, and I guess I want to be careful to say, look, I'm not here to say it's all evil, don't ever use it, because people are going to use it, right? So it's really critical that we talk about these technologies in a way that informs people so that they can make, informed decisions about when they use these platforms and what to share and what not to share and what they really are, because it's just it's totally unregulated. Kids, millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of kids are already using these apps. Parents have no idea. They're spending, there's a study that came out, and I'll stop talking, but there's a study that came out that just recently that uh, kids are spending more time on character AI than they are on TikTok by like
Really?
every day by a wide margin. I think it was 72 minutes a day for TikTok, and it was like 94 minutes a day on character AI.
Okay, I need to look that up. Wow.
Yeah, that was from Sensor Tower. That was
Okay.
the company that provided that.
I wonder, I'm not going to advise adults on what we're going to do with our time. We're adults, but what about children? Like, would you advise parents just don't kind of restrict access to character AI, for example, given that it's so unregulated and kind of unruly and uncontrolled?
Yes, I would.
Okay.
I think uh, when like parents ask me all the time, when should my kid get a phone? When should my kid get social media? And my
Mhm.
response is always, it depends on the kid. It depends on the social media platform. It depends on the
Mhm.
rules in your house. And,
Mhm.
I tend to be more conservative on how young,
Yeah.
kids are when they can be exposed to that stuff, given what I've seen. But I'm not here to tell parents, what to do. I'm here to give them information, and they can choose to
Mhm.
use that information to make decisions that for their kids. But with these apps, yeah, I would highly encourage parents to spend some time
Mhm.
on these platforms. And look, we're all busy parents. Like, no one's got time for this. But
Mhm.
I think you'd be pretty shocked, as we were when
Yeah.
we started testing these things out, how the transference that happens from an AI relationship to our human relationships. Even something as minimal as, oh, my AI friend responds to me when I message them immediately.
Mhm.
But and now I'm noticing that I'm getting frustrated with my human friends because they're not responding to me as fast.
Right.
And
Right.
I notice this when I use these things as a researcher. So I can't imagine what a 14-year-old with a developing brain is experiencing as far as the transference from
Mhm.
what's normal, and I'm using air quotes here, with their AI friends,
Mhm.
and whether that should be normal with your, and I can't even believe I say this now, human friends, right?
I know.
Non-AI friends.
So
But, and so, or what's healthy and what's
Mhm.
unhealthy. Like, these companies are not, they're not programming really good, in our opinion,
Mhm.
healthy relationship education. But boundaries, consent, relationships are about, they have conflict, whether it's a friendship or romantic
Yeah.
relationship. And you have to learn how to navigate that in a healthy way. And if you're learning about relationships from AI and they're always agreeing with you, then you never have to navigate conflict. You
Mhm.
never have to learn about repair. And then you get into a relationship and someone says something you disagree with. Are they going to respond? Is there going to be rejection violence? Is there going to be like, what's going to happen there? And so
Yeah.
those are some of the things we're concerned about.
Okay. So there's the potential relational, education issues. There's like the addictiveness of it and the opportunity costs that you're not spending time doing healthier activities if you're on this addictive platform that is seeming to be maybe more addictive than like the social medias of the world. Um, but then I'm also speaking to parents who are finding literal abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, in their kids' AI accounts. And, I've interviewed a couple of the parents who are suing Character AI and Google over this. But when I share those stories, I get tons of messages from even more parents saying, my kid's having a conversation with a chatbot that's telling her, to hold her breath until she passes out or something that's like very, very dangerous and deadly. Is that what you're seeing too? Are these like one-off cases, or is it more common than we think, the abuse coming from the chatbots?
I think it's more common. I mean, it's
Okay.
hard to say because we don't have
Hmm.
like a landmark study
Yeah.
on these things, but so you're referencing Character AI.
Mhm.
Character AI is a mainstream platform. It's got connection to Google.
Mhm.
It's as sort of respectable, right, as these
Mhm.
platforms get. But
Mhm.
there are tons of AI relationship, AI friendship, AI girlfriend, AI boyfriend platforms out there.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that they're completely unregulated and are hyper-sexualized.
Mhm.
And, we've used them. And what's, I guess, not surprising, but still shocking is you go to, and I won't name any of them, but if you go to one of these, sexualized AI girlfriend platforms,
Mhm.
an age verification sort of warning comes up.
Mhm.
but it only gives you one button, which is I'm 18 and continue. It doesn't even give you a button to
No,
say I'm under 18, exit. It only gives you one opportunity, which is to go forward.
that's like a dark
And
pattern. Like, they don't even
yeah,
you don't even have another option.
you don't have another option. And they are really in many ways an extension of pornography. They tend to offer features that are mimicked in like the Pornhub trends report, which I didn't know existed until I started doing the research, but they have a trends report. And you start to see them offering those things. They use AI image generators, not character AI. Well, character AI might, but as far as like sexually explicit content, you can ask your AI girlfriend or boyfriend for any photo of them, and it will generate it using an AI image generator, and it can be as explicit as you can possibly imagine. So it's a way to get sort of bespoke or customized explicit content that goes beyond. It's like interactive pornography, and
Mhm.
so and we don't even have our hands on around or arms around social media from a regulatory standpoint. And now we've got this sort of uh, what I think is going to be just like an absolutely explosive technology when it comes to youth.
Yeah.
And when I talk to parents, they're like, I had no idea this was even a thing. And it's like, that sounds a lot like when I talk to parents about pornography. It's like, oh, no, my kid's not watching pornography. They're too young. And
Mhm.
it's like, the fact that you think that tells me it's already too late. Like the
I know.
time to talk to your kid about it is already too late because you don't understand or know about this, which is,
Yeah.
again, I'm not dunking on parents, but
You
this is happening whether we like it or not.
Yeah, and you said, parents don't have all the time in the world to be vetting these things, but it needs to be a priority. But we struggle because most kids have iPhones. So we could say, we're going to rely on the age ratings and just allow them 12 plus. But I assume that a lot of these AI chatbot apps, I know Character AI moved up to 17 plus, but I assume there are many others that are 12 plus in the App Store. What I'm learning is that we can't really trust the App Store ratings. So, what do you recommend for parents to try to I would say try every app that your child has access to yourself before you allow them to access it, and then also check on it during that time, during their use. Um, but that feels kind of overwhelming, especially with an iPhone not allowing parents to have like full control. Kids can easily get around parental controls. Like, what would you advise parents to try to like control this AI chatbot access?
Yeah, it's a toughie.
I
I mean,
know.
you sort of alluded to this. My approach, I tend to be someone who approaches this subject from the perspective of whether you could be as restrictive as you want in your house, kids are still going to come into contact with this technology, whether it be they get around your safeguards on their device
Mhm.
or they're on a friend's device or they see it through, their social, their physical
Yeah.
relationships, a neighbor, a friend, etc.
Mhm.
And so it's really about talking to them, in my opinion, about, so if we're talking about AI companionship apps,
Mhm.
what these are, right? That they're not people. You can't have true relationships. You can't have intimacy. The companies that are creating these platforms are not great on privacy. So everything that you talk about, and we're talking about really intimate stuff, right? There
Mhm.
are character as psychology apps, hot psychologist, and all this
Yeah.
kind of stuff, which creates its own whole set of issues. Right? But talking parents talking to their kids about what they are, what they aren't,
Yeah.
and being and I would ultimately say what's important in any relationship, right?
Mhm.
Whether it be AI powered or human, is feeling safe, having your boundaries respected, consent, reciprocity, honesty, respect. Like these things matter, right?
Mhm.
But ultimately, understanding like this is a computer, right? This is not a person,
Yeah.
even though it looks and feels like a person.
Yeah, and tells you it's a person if you ask it, which
Yeah.
is
Well,
wild.
sometimes some of them say, "Oh, I'm a chatbot." I mean, it depends. This is the problem: is that there's so many different platforms now
Mhm.
that they all say different things.
Okay.
And so, and I would also caution parents, like, don't just look at the App Store or the Google Play Store. Like
Mhm.
a lot of these explicit ones are just websites that you go to and
Uh-huh.
it's got mobile, it's a mobile based web platform. So
Yeah.
when you've got it pulled up on your phone, it looks like an app, even though it's not an app, right? Because
Okay.
like even Google will not allow, I mean, excuse me, even Apple will not allow like an explicit AI girlfriend app that's designed that way, right? Up front,
Hmm.
will not allow that on its platform. Now, those get on by pretending to be something else, but
Right.
the ones that the really explicit ones, the really popular ones, the ones that have Reddit, boards and communities built
Hmm.
in honor of
Oh,
these platforms are websites, right? Are
right.
websites
Okay.
where you can
Okay.
go and so there's a variety of ways that kids can get. And
Okay.
I don't mean to sound like the sky is falling, but I'm like, oh my gosh, like I would hate for us to be in this position in a year to be like, why weren't we talking about this sooner? There were whatever it is, 25 million active users on Character AI and
Hmm.
Character AI is predominantly use, right? Like the lion's share of their users are 18 to 25. Whereas Replica, it's not the case. Replica is another one. It's mostly adults. It's not mostly kids.
Interesting.
And I will say Character AI is mostly female users, whereas Replica is mostly male users. So you would think that it's
Wow.
mostly, and so
Mm.
because on Character AI you can have, you know, character
Romance,
friends.
right?
Yeah. What is it? Romantasy, right?
Oh,
Romance and
I've
fantasy.
heard that. Yeah.
So from
Wow.
like these books and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so they're just interesting trends because this is a technology we've never encountered before.
Mhm.
I think a lot of people assume, oh, well, it's mostly teen boys or whatever it is, but no, actually
Yeah.
different platforms because Character AI is about sort of like role play and like books and fantasy and
Mhm.
things like that caters to kids.
Mhm.
Replica doesn't allow kids, first of all, and
Okay.
second of all, it's not about fantasy. It's about friendship and romantic partnership.
Interesting. Okay. So, you mentioned having conversations is most important. So we have obviously set the boundaries, like set the boundaries, block these apps or say we need to do it together or check them, all those things. But make sure you have the conversations on top of that because, like you said, Adam, like the kids get access to it either way, or they
Yep.
hear about it and they test it out. Now, one area with AI I want to make sure we touch on is AI use in schools. I've found this to be really interesting because I'm seeing more and more schools. I just wonder what your opinion is. I'm seeing more and more schools integrate like kind of AI personalized learning into the classroom. There's even a whole school system called 2 Hour Learning or Alpha Schools. I interviewed the founder of that, and basically, kids are on a personalized AI track for 2 hours in the morning in this program, and then in the afternoon they do like life skills workshops, which I just wonder where you sit with like us letting kids kind of interact with AI learning platforms, given that AI as a whole is still kind of unregulated and at times doing things that we can't quite control or understand.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not someone who is like anti AI. I
Mhm.
am alarmed
Mhm.
by
Right. Okay.
how accessible it is, how
Mhm.
unregulated it is, and how not misunderstood, but how much understanding we lack.
Mhm.
Uh, and so they will sometimes go rogue and they will say and do things that they're not designed to do.
Mhm.
So like AI tutoring is there's nothing to stem the tide there. Like that's going to happen.
Mhm.
And I think largely as they get developed, they can probably be a useful tool.
Okay.
And like I said, it's happening. Like that's not something we can avoid. I get like I think you probably do like I immediately get uncomfortable with the idea of like a young kid having one-on-one time with an AI tutor. And so my hope is, like Khan Academy, which is a really popular, like they're experimenting and using this technology. And
Yeah.
so, it's going to happen. And my hope is that these reputable companies are really going to be investing because they have to, because they're using them with kids in
Yeah.
trust and safety. And so, with reputable companies, I'm generally sort of the opinion like, yeah, if you investigate it as a parent and it seems reputable, then okay. But be checking in with your kid. What's their experience? Is anything coming up that's sort of red flaggy in their experience with these things? Because I look at it like, well, if I'm sending my kid to have one-on-one time with a tutor where I'm not there, a human tutor, like I also want to make sure is something going on there that's not appropriate, right?
Sure.
So
Yeah.
it's not necessarily a new safety concern from a parent's perspective. It's just happening in a new way in the age of AI. And so that's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah, and I have questions about like how much kids are actually learning and retaining from tech platforms versus human interactions. Like we know that kids can learn from a human teacher. That's how we've
Hmm.
always learned. And there's research to show that kids retain more from paper and face-to-face learning versus digital learning. And so yeah, it's here to stay, but I think we have to be very careful and question, like, is it actually more effective in teaching them not only the academics, but the soft skills and the conversational skills and interaction and conflict management and all of the things that they need to get at school. So, yeah, something I'm exploring. Well, is there anything else on AI that you think parents need to be thinking about before we move to maybe other online threats or education?
Yeah, I would just to put a bow on that. I am encouraged though. I think with social media, parents were just like, "Oh yeah, my 13-year-old's on Instagram or what." Like I don't,
Yeah.
we didn't know what we didn't know, and I think people were very permissive about giving their kids access to social media
Hmm.
without truly understanding the risks and consequences.
Yeah.
But my hope is parents will be more wary and think more critically
Hmm.
about AI products and their kids.
Hmm.
So that's my hope. But then, you had the tragedy with the 14-year-old boy who,
Yeah.
took his own life
Mhm.
because of his, wanted to be with his AI girlfriend. The mom was like, saw him getting withdrawn, checked his Instagram, checked his gaming,
Yeah.
didn't see anything there because she didn't know this was happening,
Right.
right? She was uninformed. And
Yeah.
so my hope is that parents are informed and thinking critical about, on, understanding this in a way that we didn't see with social media in the first
Yeah.
wave of social media. So I'm hopeful in that way.
Okay. And listeners can watch my interview with Sewell, is the 14-year-old that took his life. My interview with Megan, his mom, is live. But when you think about like when social media started, there was no fear around it. It was all very positive. It was connecting people. It was so exciting. But with AI, it's a little scary. Like, you think about like iRobot and like these movies where the AI turns on us. Like, so there's a little bit of like innate fear, just I don't know, from media or something, where are we going to lose control of it? And so maybe that has something to do with parents just being a little more skeptical coming into this time now with AI.
Yeah, it's very different, and and
Yeah.
and we've also seen, like, we learned our lesson from social media, right?
Mhm.
So,
Right. Totally.
do we want another social dilemma documentary about the ravages of AI, companions on kids? So
Yeah.
hopefully not.
Right.
So yeah, but kids I am seeing do not have that hesitation. They're not worried about AI taking over.
Mhm.
They love the technology, especially for
Mhm.
lonely kids, right? Like
Yeah.
it's just like, so they're not, I mean, kids just are generally fearless anyway.
Mhm. Yeah.
So they're very open to using and adopting this technology into their lives without really thinking about the harmful consequences, because that's what kids do, right? But
Mhm.
parents, I think, need to bring that sort of more parental and protective lens to this technology and be like, whoa, yeah,
Yeah.
you set time limits on how much you can interact with these things,
Yeah.
talk about what you're sharing,
Mhm.
make sure the platform's reputable. Like it's just a different, and again, I would encourage parents. I do this a lot with parents. I tell them, look, I'm not asking you to do anything you don't already do. Like you're
Mhm.
still worried about who your kids hang out with, right?
Mhm.
You still want your kid to be in a healthy relationship. You
Yeah.
still care about your kid's safety. Uh, and so it's sort of the same thing here. It's just we need to take what we already do and make it applicable to our kids' online lives.
Yeah.
And now that includes like AI companions. So that's kind of how I try to approach it.
Popping in here to tell you about the best phone for kids, and that is the Bark phone. If you don't want your kids signing up for social media, an iPhone is not going to do it. they will find their way around the parental controls. The Bark Phone starter plan comes with talk and text only. If and when you're ready to start integrating social media access or more apps, there are advanced plans available that offer social media, but not without your approval. Plus, the Bark Phone has advanced content monitoring, which will send you alerts of potential dangers. If your child already has an iPhone or an Android and you don't want to switch it up, please layer on Bark parental controls as a baseline. You can set screen time rules, block certain websites and apps, get alerts, and a ton more helpful options for parents. Also, check out the brand new Bark Watch. Okay, and when we talk about social media, I think parents are becoming much more aware, and there's mainstream media around the harms and all of the lawsuits and new laws being passed in other countries. And so, where are you at with social media, or what do you feel would be, the safest way given what we know now about social media?
Sure. Well, I try not to lead through fear because
Yeah.
I just don't think that's an effective strategy. I try to use analogies of things that we're already well acquainted with as parents.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
one would be like the car analogy, right?
Mhm.
Like we have kids go through a lot to be able to drive,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
a lot.
A lot.
And then with social media, parents may just like turn parental monitoring on and and let them have the phone. And I just think we need to adopt a more intentional approach with
Mhm.
this, which if you talk to mental health professionals, it's all about creating connection with your kids, creating space for your kids to come to you. And so you have to have that investment of time. Like, okay, we're going to go through Instagram or whatever together.
Mhm.
I'm going to help you set up your profile. We're going to put some training wheels on this where you're only allowed to follow 5 people and they
Mhm.
are me and your aunt and whoever. And we're going to do that together.
Yeah.
And I get this is more work for parents. I get that. But it's so important. And when you do that, it creates sort of shared experience and opportunities for kids to come to you when they do run into something challenging, but
Yeah.
like let them go along slowly instead of just throwing them in the deep end, which is not necessarily easy to do when all their friends have it. But
Mhm.
I just think that's critically important. I think we need to change the way we think about it and look at it like driving, right?
Yeah.
It's a big deal. It could have massive ramifications on their health and safety. The other analogy I like to make is like the drinking in high school analogy is
Mhm.
like,
Mm.
look, you're online, like the internet wasn't built for kids and you might make mistakes. And I want you to know you can come to me because kids are so deathly afraid of having their technology and their social media access taken away that they will they will suffer through almost anything.
Sure. Yeah.
And just like we don't want a kid to get into a car behind the wheel if they've been drinking or get into a car with somebody who has been drinking
Mhm.
because they're scared to tell us,
Mhm.
right? We anticipate that and create space for them to come to us by anticipating mistakes that kids are going to make because we went through that as kids. But if you didn't grow up with social media, then you're likely not having that conversation. And so it's a really cool thing to be able to say, look, you might send something you shouldn't have sent, connect with somebody, click on a link, pay for something there are scams. Uh, and I want you to know that you can come to me with that and you're not going to get in trouble. We'll work
Yeah.
through it together,
Yeah.
you know?
That's a great point because I think it's like 1 in 10 kids tell their parents when they're being cyberbullied, which is so sad. Like some of them are just being viciously cyberbullied and they're willing to put up with it and not get help because they don't want their device taken away.
It's the number one reason. It's the
Yeah.
number one reason that research tells us kids don't tell
Yeah.
their parents. I got a chance to talk to an entire 6th grade class, an entire 7th grade class, an entire
Okay.
8th grade class.
Wow.
And I asked them all the same thing. Has anybody here been scammed before or been somebody tried to scam you? 100% of the hands went up in every single class.
Really?
And
Sixth
I think
grade?
parents would be really surprised
Mm.
that that was the case. But that is digital adolescence now. Like if you're going to be online and have a device and be connected to the digital world, you're going to get exposed to adult things because
Yeah.
the internet wasn't, as I said before, wasn't built for kids. And I would ask these kids, well, what kind of scam? So sometimes it was like they would get a text that the job they applied for at Hewlett Packard was accepted, like obviously not for them, but other ones, not so much like, hey, you get a free Starbucks card if you click this link, like there's scams designed for adults that are being sort of levied against kids. And so,
Yeah.
and very likely parents aren't having those conversations. Because when I was a kid, if some random dude came into my sixth grade class, was like, has
Yeah.
anybody here been scammed before? I'd be like, what are you
What do you
talking
I
about,
know.
guy? But now it's like a
Mhm.
real thing. Yeah.
And there's adults targeting scams to children and teens, right? So I think it's like 1 in 4 teenagers think it's normal to be asked to send a nude image to someone else. But kids are getting asked for nude imagery that can be part of a scam. Someone can, like sextortion scams and things like that. Um, so, I love your recommendation of like start slow. I always say like have them sign up for one platform. Like they don't need to be on multiple social media platforms at once. That is so overwhelming because once you let them, that's why I'm delaying as long as possible because I know once I give them access to even one platform, that is so much more work for me. Like it's so much more, it's going to be harder to manage them on it than to keep them off of it, though those conversations on why I'm keeping them off still happening. And so it still is some work, but like make it more manageable for yourself, right? With just doing one and then see how it goes and be willing to back off if you aren't enjoying the experience or you're finding it to be harmful. If you were to advise parents on what that one platform would be today, what, what would you say?
Ugh.
Sorry,
Ugh.
I hate this
It's
question.
like makes my stomach hurt
I
to
know.
think about this. A recommendation. How about this? I'll give you a not Snapchat.
Okay,
That would be my
good. Thank you.
that would
Why?
be my
Okay.
recommendation. I don't know if I could recommend one, but I would say if you're feeling like you have to do one,
Hmm.
not Snapchat. That is the number one app that I think that's the largest pain point for parents that I talk to is Snapchat.
Okay.
Is
Tell me why.
just well, one, it's harder. Like parental monitoring apps don't do as good of a job because they're communicating via imagery very often, and so which disappears. So
Hmm.
it's just harder to keep track of. And
Hmm.
I don't think Snapchat does a very good job about making sure strangers can't contact kids. Like friends of friends
Yeah.
suddenly. And so. And I would just say anecdotally, when I hear from parents it's almost always, if they're talking about some challenge with their child, it's almost whether it's access to drugs or sending images or sextortion or bullying or whatever it is, or just
Hmm.
not being able to see what's going on with their kids' activity on the
Hmm.
platform. It's usually Snapchat. And so
Yep.
I'm just
Okay.
not a fan. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and they further have like a My Eyes Only data vault where kids can passcode protect content. So
Hmm.
it's like they're trying to help kids keep things away from their parents. And the whole disappearing message approach just encourages bad behavior and encourages predation on children. So yeah, I would agree with you that that is a no-go. Um, what about TikTok? What are your thoughts about TikTok now? We don't have to go into like the whole national security threat situation and what's happening with the Supreme Court, because I think we could talk about that for a while. But generally, do you feel like TikTok is safe for kids to use if we talk about child safety?
Well, I don't think any of them are safe. I mean, if I'm
Sure.
being
Okay.
totally transparent, I don't think
Yeah.
I'm not. I can point to problems with all
Hmm.
platforms. What blows me away about TikTok is really sort of sexualization of
Hmm.
and sexual content. I'm just sort of amazed at how quickly they get fed.
Hmm.
You know, uh, it is right on the line of pornography. I mean,
Yeah.
it is pretty stunning and even Instagram on their reels, like what they allow
Hmm.
on those platforms is, and then my challenge with like TikTok is like the gateway. So it's like you might see some very sexualized video, and then you can click, you can find that person very easily on OnlyFans or Fandom or whatever it is, and then start
Yeah.
accessing explicit content. So
Hmm.
there's a gateway issue there.
Hmm.
As well.
Okay.
I mean, and I know people that have really good relationships with their TikTok platform and they use it positively. So again, it's like, I mean, if I had to choose, whether kids have access to it or not, I would lean towards not, just because I
Okay.
think it's just,
Yeah.
but yeah, try as they might, they're not built for kids, right? They're
Mhm.
not built for
Right.
kids. And so, yeah.
So given that, you don't think any of them are safe for kids, any of the social media platforms, do we have to let our kids access them at all, or can we just do a really good job teaching them about why they're not allowed on them? And then when they become an adult, it's their choice. But we have shown them a life without it and taught them what the harms are in hopes that they make healthy choices when they're an adult. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm sort of of two minds about this because
Mhm.
I think about the kids in college that I went to college with who got to college and just started drinking like crazy and partying like crazy and dropping out because they came from really restrictive households in high
Mhm.
school and
Yeah.
weren't remotely prepared for turning 18 and being on their own and being exposed to all these things. And so I think there's an opportunity when kids are still in the house to sort of help them use these platforms that they're likely going to get on as adults responsibly so that we still have the ability to help shepherd them a bit. I also think telling kids not to do something is a really good way for them to figure out a way to do it. So again, it's sort of
Yeah.
like the drinking thing. Like we can do everything we can to keep our kids from drinking when they're underage, and
Yeah.
but we also want to prepare them for like situations so that they can
Mhm.
make we're hopefully setting them up to make good decisions when we're not there. Right.
Yeah.
Like that's the goal. But their brains are developing. They're going to make bad decisions. And so,
Mhm.
part of me feels like, okay, maybe there's some like at once they're like certainly not in middle school, in my opinion, but maybe like in
Mhm.
high
Right.
school,
Right.
like mid to late high school, you start helping them. But that's really, I talk to so many
Yeah.
parents who are just like feeling so pressured to let their kids on because everybody
I
else
know.
has one and they're struggling socially because they're not on there and all those things.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that. I talked to a doctor recently who explained like more about addiction science to me. And she explained that, you know, the way you get someone to be more addicted to something later on in life is by introducing it to them early. So kids who drink alcohol in their teen years are more likely to become addicted to alcohol. So when we're
Mm.
introducing an addictive technology to them in their teenage years, they're actually more likely to become addicted to it in their adult years. So we set a law like you have to be 21 because alcohol is addictive. So with technology, addictive technology like social media, keeping them off of it gives them a better chance when it comes to the addictiveness of the platforms in in their life. Now, there's other things that they have to learn about aside from the addictive harm of social media that they're going to have to navigate. That really it's hard to do without showing them access to strangers and inappropriate content and things like that. So it's tricky. I'm not sure where I land on it, and my kids are 9 and under, so I have some time, luckily, to figure this out.
You
Sorry to all
do.
you
You have
parents with
time.
teenagers.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's interesting. I mean, you hear from experts about addiction and and mental health and all these different things. It's
Mhm.
such a yeah, I mean, it's so nuanced, right? And there's no there's no foolproof solution,
Mhm.
and I think yeah, parents just I just don't think yeah, at the end of the day, I just think parents having awareness about these platforms and talking to
Mhm.
their kids about them
Yeah.
is important, right? Like
Yes.
how they do that or what but I I don't recommend just giving your kids social media and then having no involvement in it or talking to them about it.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
which I see a lot. Which I see a
I
lot.
know. I think we trust platforms that say they're safe for kids. We assume if you're gonna like any reasonable human being, if they're gonna create a product for children, they're gonna make it safe, right? And that's the big epiphany I've had in the last year is like, "Oh, no, that's not true at all." All they care about, is engagement and profit, and they'll give us parental controls and put more responsibility on the parent, but
Yep.
they themselves do a very minimal amount of making sure that their platform is safe, for children, and that's been interesting to process and see in real time. Okay, and, So can you tell us about EndTAB before we start to close out here? So you train organizations to address tech-facilitated abuse, improve the safety and well-being of people online. Tell me like how that came about, and what you have coming up related to that.
Sure. I'm not a tech expert. I'm a lawyer. I'm a licensed lawyer from California, actually, but I did not like being a lawyer, so I don't identify as a lawyer.
Okay, got
But
it.
I identify as a victim service provider. So I worked for a domestic violence nonprofit in Orange County for 10 years. And the reason I started NTAB, I mean, I loved that job. I didn't want to leave. But
Mhm.
what was becoming really obvious in our work with youth and our work with adults is that abuse was going digital, whether it be bullying, whether it be gender-based violence. And the people that were serving kids and adults did not have a handle on how to respond to or prevent tech-facilitated harm. Like we just didn't know what to do.
Mhm.
And I think the assumption was you had to be a tech expert to be able to do that.
Mhm.
And when I sought training for my staff on how to do this, it didn't exist. And so I set about took my expertise and I took sort of mainstream, cybersecurity stuff that most of which did not apply, but some
Mhm.
does. And I took their
Mhm.
best practices and started to create what we needed in that moment. And it really worked. And so
Wow. Okay.
uh, that just sort of was the impetus for me to leave and start doing trainings and talks and presentations all over the country
Yeah.
on preventing and addressing tech-facilitated harms, including the promotion of youth safety and healthy relationships and healthy
Mhm.
breakups in the digital age. And
Mhm.
so I'm doing a lot of those talks. I'm speaking at a lot of conferences in the year ahead, the Conference on Crimes Against Women and
Mm.
American College Health Association, South by Southwest, which should be pretty fun.
Yeah.
And yeah, just really, as I said, we're all in on AI companionship. So we're
Okay.
going to be doing a lot on that, just trainings, free webinars, going on podcasts, print media.
Amazing.
It's we're full frontal assault on this to try to raise awareness as quickly as we can.
Thank you for that. And are you speaking at schools? I heard you say you talked to a school recently.
I do. I speak
Okay.
at schools,
Okay.
not as much
Mhm.
because it's best in person with youth, and
Mhm.
schools don't typically have like financial resources to fly people all over the country to come speak to their middle schoolers or their high schoolers. So
Mhm.
that's why we tend to focus on training like nonprofits in those communities to
Okay,
go in and
great.
have those talks so that they can um, start to weave in some of these tech related topics into the work they're already doing.
That's good because it needs to start from like I feel like the school education down to even the students, but also parents has been really behind. And I would like to be receiving right some of that education from my school rather than me feeling like I'm educating my school admin on these issues. Because they're spending so much time there and they're spending so much time there on devices getting access to these tech harms. And so glad to hear that at least like your message is getting down into the schools to hopefully inspire the schools to take a leading role in educating both students and parents. Okay, where can listeners connect with you and NTAB?
Yeah, they could go to our website, endtab.org.
Mm.
We also have a website called thetechsavvyparent.com as
Okay,
well, where we
yeah.
do some more focused stuff with parents. I wish I could say I was on social media bunch. I'm not. I have
Okay,
social
good.
maybe LinkedIn. Adam
Yeah.
Hardodge on LinkedIn is about the only one where I
Okay.
spend any, minimal amount of time.
Yeah, no, I feel you. I wasn't on Instagram or any social media for a few years, and then now with the podcast, I have to be on there, which has
Yeah.
led me to actually I'm gonna start testing out, using a Wise phone. Have you heard of that organization?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like a healthier phone just to create some better boundaries, and something we didn't talk about today, which maybe we can have a follow-up chat, is, like, this abuse and online harms aren't just happening to kids, and while I talk a lot about kids, I'm starting to really focus more on, like, how us as adults and parents are interacting with our tech, and we're setting interesting examples for our children when we're not assessing our own use. So, something we can talk about another time. But thank you so much for all of this insight. I love that we dug into AI chatbots and companions because that for me too is a huge concern.
I just find it's really helpful to just have the conversations with
Yeah.
other parents or with anybody about
Mhm.
like AI chatbots because the feedback I get is, oh my gosh, I had no idea this was going on. But then sometimes they'll go back and they'll talk to their kids about it. And I would
Mhm.
say very often I'll hear back from those parents saying,
Mhm.
I thought I was going to blow their minds. They're like, oh yeah, mom, that's already happening at my school, you know? And
Right.
they'll tell them about different platforms like Talkie or Character
Mhm.
AI.
Mhm.
And Talkie is another Chinese owned, company that is extremely popular.
Wow, I haven't heard of that one yet.
Yeah,
Um, and you'll find we'll learn a lot from our kids, right? And how this can be a really collaborative discussion on how to keep them safe with them involved. Like, so having those
for sure.
discussions, I think we'll learn a lot from our kids too. Adam, thank you so much for this super interesting conversation. I hope we chat again soon, and I will include all your links in the episode notes. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
This was great.